Great. Welcome to today's conversation. True Northers, once again, we're talking about the professional to the professional, and we are going to have another interesting conversation around psychology, the practice, the person, our world, our nation, and everything to do with that. Karibu.
Asante sana.
I wondered if the first place you would want to begin with
Yeah.
is introducing yourself.
Okay, so my name is Kayealianda Makuku Makalwin. I have several names, about 7 of them, but I like to go under Kayealianda. So I'm practicing psychology, trained as a professional counselor. I've been in the field for like 4 years now, and continuing to grow in it and to learn. So I'm really excited by this conversation. I had no idea what I was jumping into, but I'm always one to try new things, and particularly because I'd read about your True North. I like the name. You probably have to tell me why that name. And I did like the work you were doing, so I feel really honored and privileged that you picked me.
Thank you.
All right.
I guess the thing that stands out for me about you is the language, because I know you're one of the few professionals in this area of mental health that conducts your sessions in some other language besides English.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about that, the history of that, where it's coming from, perhaps the first time you ever had to use it, and what your general view is about the delivery of counseling in the language of the client, or the language that the client best understands. Actually,
that's very important, because language is everything. Language is communication. Talk therapy uses language to communicate. I mean, there are other modalities that use, the somatic modalities that don't necessarily use words. But the language comes in for me. I love language, I love words. I studied language. I was a language teacher. I used to teach French. I trained as a French teacher, so I used to teach French to high school. I also used to teach literature in English, so also words.
Yes.
Words. So words are everything, because, of course, body language as well is there. But if the tool of your trade is words, you need to be able to engage with the person that you're speaking to. And where I trained in South Africa, I trained in Johannesburg, which is sort of predominantly Zulu when you go to the local languages. So we actually had to take a module to speak Zulu, because we were being trained to work within communities, not so much the one-on-one counseling. So my approach to psychology is very much community-based. So I had to learn Zulu, because you're going to go into a community, and if you cannot relate, then you're really wasting your time. I mean, you can use an interpreter, but a lot is lost in translation. And never mind the issues of confidentiality and the client feeling safe. So when I first started practicing, because I worked in a public clinic which was open to everybody. So a lot of the people coming to the clinic were from the township, from under-resourced communities. So most of them didn't speak English. And because I'm Black, they would assume that I speak a local language. But trust me, I managed to communicate at least 50% of the words I could express. And so they realized, okay, you're not South African, but you are making an effort. And it really improved the relationship so much, as opposed to where already there's a language barrier, so that already creates that, there's no rapport that is established. And then with the French, I would get people from the DRC who didn't speak English, so immediately they knew you spoke French. They felt safer, and I think you know that in therapy, the trust
Yes.
is like 80% of it. And Kiswahili as well. I work with anybody and everybody. You could be the first lady, you could be somebody's the guard somewhere, and when they see that you speak Swahili, they immediately get the confidence. So for me, language is everything, and I always strive to communicate in the language of the person, or at least the level or mix, so that you communicate effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that to be so interesting. The fact that when you went to study psychology, one of the requirements was to learn the local language, which has actually just led me to wonder why or how come it is you ended up going to South Africa to train as opposed to training locally.
I wanted a change in my life.
Okay.
I'd basically been working in the teaching profession. I think I'd hit my max. I'd done my time. So I was going like through an existential crisis and looking for a change in direction in my life. And I knew that being in this environment wasn't going to be good for me. So I really needed to just get out of this environment and kind of rebrand and recreate myself. Because one thing I realized when you're in the same space, you might be trying to move in a different direction, but because your friends, your family, they're also used to you being this, they also resist that change in you. So I just needed a clean break, get away, and South Africa worked for me because it's an African country, and I just thought, why not? Let me see something from a different perspective.
That is so interesting because I feel like part of, and maybe you'll tell me, do you think your evolution, you've called it rebranding, so let me use the word rebranding. Do you think your rebranding has contributed to how you show up for your clients in therapy sessions?
Yeah, definitely. Because I would say that coming from a very different approach there, where I found, just the fact that you go to a different culture, it forces you to re-examine yourself, where you're coming from and the culture that you're getting into. So I found that the culture there was very professional. People meant what they said. It's quite a competitive environment because there's a lot of psychologists, a lot of counselors. So if you're not on your A game, you're not going to succeed. So I find that I was able to take that kind of ethic with me, and just knowing that, you've got to be there for the client. There's no saying, 10 o'clock, you show up at 10:30 or whatever. So I found that really made me the way I am now today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you can't say that it was the same for you as in when you started. It was able to grow you professionally and personally as well.
Oh yes, big time. Big time, because when you change your environment or when you change your culture, you're forced to examine certain things about yourself. So for instance, I realized one thing, that I didn't have filters before.
Oh.
Yes, I used to be this kind of person who just said things. Wasn't probably socially intelligent or emotionally intelligent, but there I found I had to be a lot more careful, because you're dealing with so many different Johannesburg is so cosmopolitan.
Yes.
There's so many different people, so many different cultures. And then just coming from that, the backdrop of apartheid, where there's a lot of sort of like people on eggshells, and you've got to be really careful what you say to people and judge the situation. So I learned to filter a lot more and to be more aware that I'm in a different context. and be appropriate.
Yeah.
And boundaries was another thing. So for me, I think maybe just having been in one place, I took it for granted because this is just how we operate, and
And I guess that's the beauty of travel. For me, I would say where you get your training, where you get your education. I mean, I know you went to a local university where you qualified to be a teacher before you trained now in the mental health bit. But I always feel like where you train in, where you go to school, sort of shapes your world view. It even shapes how you show up in the world and how you represent yourself and even how you treat people. And so hearing how it was for you when you were here, when you went to South Africa, those were two different worlds for you. And then you came back in 2021 and you had to sort of reinsert yourself. What have you found now to be true, or what is your experience now?
Right now, the risk of sounding judgmental, sometimes I get frustrated because I find that the profession that we are now practicing in, I find that it's not as energized. People have a sort of laid back attitude, and there's a lot of sort of thinking that this is not working, and we don't make it work for ourselves. We're waiting for someone to make it work. Whereas the professional engagement I had before, people were always consulting each other, they were always finding out what's happening and making it work, because it's so competitive. If, like we say, you snooze, you lose. Nobody's gonna give it to you. You need to go out there and make it happen. So, for instance, you'll find that one of the things I realize is we seem to do a lot of pro bono work and stuff like that. So you're wondering, hey, you went to school for X amount of years, you spent school fees, you did this. How on earth am I expected to give free services all the time? I mean, you can, and I believe we all do pro bono services, but you can only allocate so much. So, and then I found that there was this feeling that people will accept anything they're paid. There's no saying this is like lawyers and accountants, they have their associations, and doctors which regulate how much they are paid. So you can't just say, oh, I'll pay you 500 shillings per session. It's so I find that people underestimate or undersell their services a lot. And that doesn't then do your self-esteem well, because it's not even then you can make a living from the profession, yet you should, just like any other profession. So that's sort of some of the differences that I noticed.
Where do you think it comes from? And I'm asking this because this is a conversation that, I've had with many of the psychologists that I have interviewed. What is the bedrock of this mentality?
Maybe you know better, you've been in the field in this space better.
I mean, of course I have my own theories, I think first and foremost is the relationship between mental health and religion in this country.
Okay.
Let me not say mental health. Actually, that's not right. It's the relationship between mental illness. Yes, mental illness and religion in this country. I think it starts from there.
What's the link?
The link is that there is no mental illness. You just are having a spiritual attack.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So the idea is that if therefore it is from a religious perspective, you're having a spiritual attack, then anything that goes towards countering that attack and helping the individual is the work of God. Kazi ya kanisa.
I haven't come across that, but now that you say it, does this then explain why people be exorcised Or people would be prayed for?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And would you say it's the same thing, like what is like an ancestral intervention or calling? It's the ancestors are unhappy with you. And
so those are two different things.
Okay.
So there's the religious bit of it. Then there's now the cultural and traditional aspect of it that now involves the realm of those who have come before us, not just ancestors, but also the presence of the different deities that we believe that exist, whether it is in the trees, in the mountains, in the animals, in the rivers, right? That's why there are a lot of rituals that are conducted that have to do with either wilderness or the river, mountains, the moon, stuff like that. So that's, again, a different concept. But then now we have the religious one that is, which is so interesting to me because it's not just for Christians, it's also for Muslims as well.
Sure, I've heard that.
Exactly. Where you are taken and, they have this session where you're prayed for the Quran and, a lot of processes happen there. And that's the religious bit. But even in theirs, there is also the cultural and traditional aspect of it in terms of the ancestors and, the spirituality of it, because there are even concoctions that are prepared and people are told, go and drink this for like a week. And these are Muslims, right? And so if you come now to Christians, you'll find, again, there's that religious aspect, there's training, there's beating, there's praying over, but then there's also slaughtering of cows and chicken,
animals.
And there's also bathing in the river. There's also trekking for a couple of nights and just resting during the day. There are all these rituals,
Pilgrimages.
exactly, that are involved like that. So you find that when now you're saying come to a counseling room and their understanding is that mental illness and religion and culture and tradition and one of the same thing, well, how do I pay for that? These other practices are paid for, like the whole they are paid for, right? But there's always the idea that they are not paying the person doing it, they are paying God.
True.
You get.
Yeah.
So now when you're coming to a counseling room, there's no connect. How am I paying God? So, no, but why should you get the money? And so that's why there's that whole. That's
your theory. I like it.
Theory.
It's a very interesting one, so, but I'm glad. I'm sure it's well informed because you've had this conversation more than I have.
Yeah.
But what I'm thinking, this mentality, I think it comes from the place in which, in terms of hierarchy, where we place mental health. I mean, physical health is always number one.
Top.
People understand when you say, I've got a headache, or I broke my hand, or
I'm having diarrhea.
Or diarrhea.
Yeah.
People understand that. So it's this whole hierarchy of things. And also for me, it's what is seen. We tend to focus on what we can see and give that priority. What I can't see, I'm like, how do I even know anyway? She's smiling, she's looking sour.
Yeah.
So people don't prioritize, because when you think about the fact that even insurance companies, they're quick to pay for physical medical care. But mental health?
You have to prove yourself.
You have to be hospitalized. Yet we know.
Not exactly.
Counseling is about
preventative.
And it's outpatient. It's not inpatient.
Yeah.
So the whole system, the way things are structured, is not made in a way that counseling and psychology is taken to be real. It's like it's something that people can just deal with.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it again comes down to this whole narrative that has been propagated about the medicalization of human health. Like, if we are not cutting you, if we are not giving you medication, if we are not injecting you, if we are not scanning you, we are not treating you. There's that whole idea as well.
Evidence, physical, so what they call evidence-based. I've got to see stitches to understand something happened here.
Yeah. And also just the idea that we shall know you are not well if you have abnormal and bizarre behavior. And up until we see that you're trying to dry your clothes by lighting a fire, we don't believe you're unwell. Up until we see you completely disinhibited, walking around naked and not knowing you're naked, we don't think there's anything wrong with you. Up until you actually take your own life, we actually don't know you're unwell. You know, all these things that we are seeing prior is just you seeking attention, is just you being a brat, is just you
being
not
weak.
wanting, it's just you being weak. It's just you not wanting to accept the life that you're living. You know, so that sort of perspective is what, but that's just what stigma is. And we have to be able to just, in my view, appreciate where we are at so that we can be able to carve out the way forward. And this is not something that happens to people who come from, you know, like, if you consider the stratification of society, this is not something that comes from people who maybe don't have a lot or, you know, don't earn much. This is up and down. You know, our society, from the very wealthy to the not so very wealthy. So it's not even a question of money anymore. It's really a question of mentality.
It's a question of, I think we spoke about this formally in our ice-breaking conversation, where it's the way we are socialized, so coming down to conditioning. This is what we know, and we know that culture runs deep. Beliefs run deep, and also people are afraid to go against the grain. This is what they know, so this is what they're sticking with. So I think sometimes having these conversations leaves me a bit flustered, because I'm just thinking, so what are we even saying?
No, I know, I told you.
What is even psychology? Should we even be doing this stuff?
I know, and I think that's where we need to think of it. Because I think a majority of us have had this amazing education in that it was very expensive. Let's start from there.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, we had this very expensive education that we paid for. And what I have found to be true is that not everything we've learned has prepared us for the population we are to serve.
Absolutely.
Right?
In fact, not just that we spent a long time learning, it's never ending.
It's never ending, that's another thing.
Yeah, things evolve all the time. They change all the time. And you cannot be that person who studied 10 or 20 years ago and you're using that information.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that got me out of teaching, because I just thought, hey, I've been teaching this lesson for the last 20 years. It's the same, it doesn't change.
Yeah.
The grammar doesn't change.
Yeah.
The kids are going to make the same mistakes the ones made last year. So for me, I got to a place where I felt stagnant and I just wasn't stimulated intellectually.
Yeah.
And I didn't enjoy the work. So I love psychology, so to speak, because there is so many new theories that come up all the time. And I think what's exciting now is we're living in a very dynamic time where you're seeing a lot of people who are speaking on matters of trauma, matters of neuroplasticity, things which are
epigenetics.
Yes, so it's exciting. And these are still living people.
Yes.
It's not like, oh yeah,
Freudian.
Freud who lived so many years
Skinner.
ago.
Skinner.
Skinners and all that lot. Now these are people you can actually meet and you can engage. So
you can write them.
Email.
And they write back.
Yeah, so.
Yep.
That for me is exciting. But yeah, it does leave one a bit helpless and hopeless sometimes, because I think we talked earlier also of the context in which you operate. But sometimes you're dealing with clients and this is just not working.
Yeah.
It's not working, and no matter what you're saying to them, so whether there's a cultural block, whatever block it is, I have no idea, but it can leave you quite hopeless.
Yeah.
And I think that's where then people say, why should I go to a psychologist? What are they going to help me with?
Yeah.
People understand dawa. If I give you medicine, something to swallow or drink, okay, again, psychologically, it makes you think you're going to get better.
Yeah.
But people don't understand that by unpacking a difficulty, a challenge, pain that they're going through, that you help process that pain and make it, helps you see it from a different perspective and make it less painful, or help you get unstuck from a place. Because I've seen a lot of people who are stuck in a time and place and they just cannot move on because they are locked in that space and time, trapped, so to speak. So they suffer, they're in pain.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are not speaking about this, but I constantly find myself speaking on things that probably have not become mainstream yet. And this is how pharmacology has taken over mental health.
Exactly.
You talked about the dawa earlier, and I think one of the things that we seriously need to have a conversation about is how sufferers of mental illness have been hooked onto pharmaceutical interventions solely, without the engagement of a psychotherapeutic process that is going to actually help process and alleviate them from the stuckness that you were just talking about. And I have, of course, known about, the profession of psychiatry since I was a child, right? And this is all because of my family. And even then, psychiatry, it was this violent thing that...
unpleasant.
Yeah, that was visited on people. But I remember, meeting a few clients, and when somebody says to me, I've been using this drug for the last 40 years. Hey! It's when somebody says it is when I go like, hey! Jesus! And that's when I realized, we have a runaway train situation right now that's going on. So when I think in terms of context, when it was less people seeking mental health care, when it is once again an application of knowledge that was learned in the 80s, the 70s, maybe the early 90s, that is still being applied today. And that's why you have sufferers of mental illness hooked on only drugs that have limited their ability to have families, drugs that have limited their ability to keep jobs, drugs that have limited their ability to socialize. Every person I know right now whose family is bringing them to basically get them off drugs. Oh my God. It is insane that because of a mental health condition that complemented with therapy would have given somebody a chance, somebody's life is completely done. Yeah. Done! So I'm thinking back in the day, there were a few people. You first of all had to come from a family that had a lot of money.
That could afford. Yeah.
That could afford. So that was one way guys were hooked, right? But then there was this generation of the early 2000s where especially ADHD became the go-to.
The buzzword.
The buzzword. And I'm telling you, I think it was 2004 or 2005 where Ritalin ran out here in Kenya, parents were hitting the roof.
They were in panic.
They went into, how are we going to control our children? They asked. Because there was no Ritalin. It had to come from South Africa. And I found that to be so interesting because now I realized something else that was now developing was that pharmaceutical interventions were now being used as a parenting tool. And I was like, oh, Jesus, what's happening here? But again, we have this thing where people don't want to engage because this is something they don't seem to understand. They don't want to admit to. They're embarrassed about it. They want it dealt with quickly.
And neatly.
And neatly. Yes. And tied in a bow. And so over the years, there has been a huge influx of drugs to address things like anxiety. Come on. You know? I'm not saying that the drugs are bad, but I'm saying you really should not prescribe this medication to somebody for over 6 months, for over a year. You know?
For the rest of their lives.
Or for the rest of their lives.
But let me just cut you short then, talking of pharmacology, because I did a lot with youngsters. From
What the hell are young people doing on antidepressants and anxiolytics? And
they're
what
already on drugs from 10 years.
Imagine, we
they
have a
become
problem.
dependent.
Yes.
So I was asking, how come, growing up, even I asked people from different cultures, was it the same for you guys? What has changed that 10-year-olds are now on drugs? So pharmacology is a very interesting area for me because I remember when I was studying, one of the things about the dawas was basically you medicate to regulate. It's easier when you're zombied out, usumbui, because then it's different from when if I don't have the drugs, I can chain you somewhere, like sadly, or lock you in a room for people who don't have the money, but the people who can afford the money. So that controls you, but it completely erodes your quality of life, which you've mentioned. And which then led me to looking at other things, modalities of working, because I know that for sure sometimes talking is not enough.
No, it's not.
That you do need medication to work alongside. But I also realized, and then I started engaging a lot with somatic therapies.
Yes.
So I've been trained now to do trauma tension release.
Good.
Which, from what I've seen, can help people get off medication.
Yep.
Helps a lot with trauma, helps with anxiety, insomnia, all these things we're talking about. And I've recently also just qualified in neurofeedback.
Good.
Which is also another intervention that doesn't use medication.
Yes.
So this is where the person maybe is not able to verbalize, not able to talk, but as we know, the trauma is in the body.
It's in the nervous system.
It's in the nervous system.
Exactly.
So the polyvagal theory for me it's great because you talked about people not being able to engage. So that social engagement theory for me is very important because you'll realize these people are either living in a flight mode, freeze mode, or fight mode, and they're not able to engage like they should.
That's right.
So I'm looking a lot into the somatic therapies as well, and combining it with talk therapy. Where medication is necessary, I might refer, but it's always my last option.
Absolutely.
Because it can cause a lot of dependency and a lot of loss of quality. I mean, the psychiatrists don't like to hear this, but
that's where the money is.
Yeah, and basically, very few psychiatrists will actually take time to understand what you're going through. It will be like, oh, okay.
5 minutes.
Your script 6 months ago was this. Okay, are we halving the dose? Are we doubling the dose? Thank you very much. And that's so much money. So I don't know. It's not a battle between psychologists and psychiatrists. I think that we must understand that no one is better than the other. We all are a team. We need to work holistically for the care of people, everyone has a different role to play. You know, the physiotherapist has his role,
Yeah.
the nutritionist has their role, even the pastor in the community, the elders, every one of us, we give care differently. And it's not a competition, it's not a show of might, who's better, who's higher up in the food chain, but realizing what contribution can each professional or person make to help the individual lead a more holistic and engaged life.
And you see, at the end of the day, for me, I feel that's not the responsibility for psychologists, because psychologists are the ones who are in the front line saying exactly what you're saying. But for me, I don't feel it's the responsibility of psychologists, which now brings me to the
what bigger the responsibility.
Because like what you say, like like what you just said, it's not a competition, it's not about but you're the only one who is saying that. And so for me, I'm feeling it's not.
Two of us are saying it.
What I'm saying is, or I hear what you're saying. Yes. The psychologists are the ones saying that, but it's not the responsibility of psychologists to say that, which brings the conversation to the wider expanse of the ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about is not about psychologists or psychiatrists. It's not just about, sufferers of mental illness. It's also about the nature of the care, the circle of care that we have for human health.
Exactly.
Right? And so what we're saying is that how do we make it a conversation that is within the ecosystem? And for me, it has to do with being able to adapt, even in terms of the training. Make it multidisciplinary. The idea that this profession trains here, that profession trains there, that profession, and then you all go to meet on one patient, you can understand why people come in with their egos. Because in the institution where you've been taught, you have been taught psychology is this and that. You have been taught, physical medicine is all of that. In this other, segment that is there, you've been told pharmacology is all this and that. But in your training, you were never brought together to collaborate.
The whole was never put together.
Those different professionals were not brought together to be able to even appreciate each other where they're at. You only come to meet these other people when you're real life dealing with a human condition, and yet where you've come from, you've been taught that your way is the way. And that's why I'm talking about the larger ecosystem program. And that's why I like, for example, what Moi University, is that the one in Eldoret?
Yes, there's Edgerton and there's Moi.
Edgerton and Moi, but I think all of them are closed now, isn't it? There's an issue, there are issues of management there.
As in shut down?
Yeah. There are issues of management going on there. But, they have this program where, although it's at a very high level, it's at the PhD level, where they bring the different professionals, even non-medical.
Yes, because you have to include them.
That's what I'm saying, in the training now. And you see, when now these people come out into the world, they're coming out knowing it's a collaborative effort.
Exactly.
It's a multidisciplinary approach.
Holistic.
It's a holistic program. It's multi-level. It's multi-pronged. I don't know it all. I need to consult. I need to be able to call in. I need to be that sort of thing.
Or even knowing who to appropriately refer to.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, and that's why I was talking about the larger ecosystem. And, it comes back to what we were talking earlier, about the training that we have, about, how long the training we have is serving for, the idea of continuous education, the idea of regulation of the profession, and now the idea of the ecosystem. So the acts and laws in between there. And that's why for me, I feel like the adaptability for us as psychologists can only happen if we are in the grips of the reality of the containment that we're in right now, in that it's extremely fluid. There are more questions than answers. And the idea that we know what we are doing only exists in our minds. I know a lot of people don't like me saying that.
Okay. Yeah, you begin to, but yes, I agree with you, but also there's some concrete evidence when people come back and they say, gosh, I'm really glad I came to see you. My life has taken a turn for the better. So then I think it removes it just from being from your mind.
No. That's one person.
Yes.
You see, one person is okay, but that one person will also come back to you to say that because you have realized everything you are taught may not be suitable for your client, and you have adapted. And you have adapted using your own resources, using your own initiative. But what I'm talking about is a larger ecosystem where that adaptability, like what you have in South Africa. Do people do this individually? Isn't it like the way the profession rules? Isn't it the way the profession is plugged in with the other professions?
The multidisciplinary.
Exactly, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how did they achieve that?
Maybe with time and more experience and more regulation, because everybody needs to know your scope, because we all practice within a scope. There's things I can do, you can do, vice versa. So there's knowing that and knowing, oh, okay, this is not within my realm, but Lucy, this is her.
But how has South Africa achieved that? How?
I guess I don't know if I'm right in saying this, maybe the field of psychology has been more embraced for a longer period than it has here.
No, but they're Africans just like us.
Yes.
So what's the difference?
The difference, I think there's a lot more, psychologists and counseling is a bit more visible there. But that said and done, a lot of the Black South Africans still will use their traditional healers. They're
That's my point. Yes, they're sangomas.
Yangas,
yes.
And all those guys. So they're there and
yes.
people use them openly.
True.
But, and I think it's also happening in Kenya, where these sangomas and yangas are being brought into mainstream because they play a big role in terms of healthcare, mental health care. They're not being ignored.
I think it's either KU or JKU that actually had something to do with traditional healers, right? And then I don't know whether it is in Machakos where there was a seminar on witchcraft, something like that, and people went crazy.
Why?
Sometimes I feel like the people who go crazy.
They went crazy how?
As in terms of, how can you do this? We are Christians, we don't. So I know.
Okay.
So sometimes I look at those people and I'm like, these are the people who are consulting witch doctors at night. As well.
But you know what? I believe that there are forces that sometimes we can't explain.
100%.
Yeah. So I cannot rule out the idea of witchcraft or a curse, because somebody comes to you and they seriously believe and you are seeing evidence of what's happening. Who am I to argue with that?
Absolutely.
I can only work with what they're giving me, but if they choose to use that as their healing avenue, I'm even relieved, because that is where they're going to find their healing. I cannot say that I'm the only one who's going to provide you relief.
Yeah.
If your priest can provide, if your imam can provide it, if your sangoma can do it, or your what the traditional doctors here, what do we call them? There's different names in Kikamba.
Yeah, they come from, so
every ethnic group
Chawi?
has, but Chawi is seen negatively, sort of.
I know, but that's only here. But if
I thought Chawi is the one who like puts evil.
No, that's I think the idea of Uchawi has been radicalized here.
Okay.
But if you go just across to South Africa, Mchawi is understood to be a healer. They say Mchawi even during the day they say Sule Mchawi ndiye ule. But here you say Mchawi the ibadi.
Unless they are your person you go and consult before you go for a journey, before you go for a job interview. Everybody has this person they go to.
So I don't know, for Kenyans I feel like I don't know. It's an interesting dynamic because
I think we are caught in between cultures, in between values. We are not coming out strongly.
Because of, I would say, not just religion, Christianity. Because of Christianity.
Because in South Africa, they are very categorical. You cannot sideline. This is who we are.
Exactly.
And we are embracing it.
Our problem has also to do with identity.
The same.
Our issue is identity. Identity. I think we are so caught up with the whole identifying with the Christianity
like, who
thing.
are we?
Exactly. Who are we is actually what is bringing the struggle. Because there are people who believe, Christianity is the path to life after death.
Yeah.
Life after death. And so people have believed the idea of, brimstone and fire and hell, and that, it is only Jesus Christ who is the way and the life, and, and completely bought into it. Without the understanding from a contextual point of view, for example, that our traditional and cultural beliefs and spiritual practices are actually older than Christianity.
Exactly. And they were existing before Christianity.
And the fact that Christianity was actually just
foreign.
Not even foreign, it was a tool that was used to colonize us.
It was a tool that was used to enter. But then again, that brings me down to we as a people being intolerant of each other and being judgmental.
Yeah.
Just because I believe something, just because I'm not a Christian or I'm not this, I then judge you and condemn you. I don't embrace diversity.
Yeah.
I'm more like shoot it down and try to take you out.
Yeah.
So I think that is also, it can contribute.
100%. Because you realize even with our own training, it is so, Eurocentric, American-centric, that it doesn't even introduce us to the idea of, for example, other religions and spiritual practices or cultural practices. Like my best friend when I was in uni was an Indian. And we studied psychology together. But it was interesting to see the other practices they had, not just rooted in their religion, but just their spiritual practices that actually had to do with the unification of the mind, the body, the spirit,
So
exactly, and I was like, wow.
And they honor that.
But we are not being taught that.
We are taught to shun.
Yes. I think for me the biggest thing that I think was a huge unlearning was this thing called compartmentalization. Every time I hear somebody say, I'm so good at compartmentalization, I just go like,
Why does it bother you?
Because I think it is the one practice that has been hyped so much, but it is the most harmful in terms of separating us from ourselves. And it is only for the purposes of productivity. It's not for the purposes of wellness or like being a good human being or being a good... It's for the purposes of productivity, so that you can continuously chase the capitalist ideals.
I was going to say, then it runs into the capitalist realm.
Thank you. Exactly. So, because imagine this idea where you're told, okay, when you're at work, be this, be that, be the other. Then when you're at home, be this, be that, be... Like,
when you're at school, let's
be this,
be
this, be that.
So
it's like we are contributing to people to be disingenuous. Not just to the world, but to themselves.
And I like that story, to cut you short.
Yeah.
Because I was watching, probably you've heard of Gabor Mate.
I love Gabor Mate. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I just love the dude. So he says in one of his conversations that the trouble starts when we lose our authentic self.
That's exactly it.
And it starts right from the
childhood,
the ECD, where they start to clip your wings,
yes,
and mold you
yes.
into something that's not you. You lose your authenticity.
No, we are molded.
And that's where the pain and the trauma starts.
Exactly. So yeah, so for me, alignment has now, been the thing that I'm really trying to help bring somebody to themselves. I think that's the greatest...
The reintegration, so to speak.
Yes.
Where you
an alignment of the self. And then, exactly.
Bringing back.
Yeah, because for me, it is the first thing that made a whole world of difference. Alignment. And I began observing and realizing that disingenuous nature that people have is what is killing the inner light more than anything else.
Being who you're not.
But yet we embrace it. We're like, that's
how we are conditioned.
Yeah, let me tell you, I remember so many times where I've had other people being told, I have even been told, don't be yourself. We are going to do this and that. Don't be yourself.
Don't be trouble.
Don't
question.
Yes, don't be yourself.
I get into trouble all the time because I'm myself.
But that's what I'm saying. So, we have accepted. I mean, it's a crazy thing when you think about how we are already set up to lose our minds.
Set up for failure.
Not even to lose your mind.
To go crazy from the day go.
Yeah, and that's why for me even the idea of psychology needs to be tipped over its head, because this idea that abnormality, this idea that
conformity?
Abnormality, abnormality, bizarre behavior, our mental nervous breakdown, deviance. But the fact that all these things exist between the ears of one person, for me, has become unacceptable, because we've already set up an environment that actually is making people
conducive to that,
lose their bloody minds. And sometimes losing your bloody mind is also betraying your authentic self. So how can we continuously have poor leadership, bad public services, noise, climate change, hunger, starvation, abuse of human rights,
just basically,
how can we have all these things in our environment and then we stay normal?
Impossible socioeconomic conditions.
And then we stay normal. How is that even possible?
It's not possible.
But that's what I'm saying. So this idea that people are being told the problem is what is being... No. Look at the environment and what it's doing to people. Look at kids. Right now you're talking about kids who, from 10 years old, have been put on medication. But look at the home environment for this. Our homes have become extremely violent.
Yeah, they're hostile.
In
fact, I'm a big believer of Bronfenbrenner's theory, whereby you have to look at the whole ecosystem, the 5 levels that he talks about, because nobody is in a bubble. You can be here safe in this room, but you're not going to live here eternally. You've got to go out of that gate and engage. Then beyond that, there's a chief who has a say about this area. There's policies that govern. There's things happening in your environment that are beyond your control, that will drive you in a certain way. And I believe when you lose your mind, it's actually not weak. It's actually your brain saving you from the pain.
It's self-protection.
It actually shuts down because you can't cope. And I remember one conversation I was having with a psychologist who's a Muslim scholar, and he said that when Allah sends you depression, it's a gift, because it's actually protection. And even Gabor talks about it.
He does.
and says it's you're not being weak. Your brain is saying you can't cope with what's going on, so it's shutting off and protecting you.
Yeah.
Not being able to take in what's happening.
Yeah.
And staying alive.
Yes.
So
yes, it's and these are some of the things we are not focusing on, because again, coming back to Gabor Mate, and which just brings me back to like what we even have going on here, where what we are finding cannot be titrated upward to bring to make a contribution to the global mental health conversation, because what is happening may look like chaos, right? And it probably is, but it also is an indicator to how people are struggling for their lives.
Survival.
Yes, it in itself is an indicator. It's an indicator of actually what the needs are that we should be meeting. Instead, it is viewed from the light of indiscipline, or it's viewed as a form of civil unrest, or a form
insolence.
Yes, something that needs to be brutally brought to its knees.
Yeah, contained. And that takes me to crime and punishment.
Yes.
What is the crime committed versus the punishment being meted out?
Yes.
Is it merited? Or was this a necessary crime to survive?
Yeah.
So, but I feel like now we're just engaging on another level, philosophy, and yet these things are intertwined.
They are.
So actually, I've just finished my master's in community mental health promotion.
Good.
And one of the things that modules was very much about policy.
Yes.
And human rights.
Yes.
Like really
exactly.
activating, what's the word? It's advocating.
Yes.
And agitating for human rights. Because without all these systems and policies and acts and governance, you're always going to have these problems.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And it comes down again to what you said. What is psychology?
Yeah.
Because our training is that psychology is this thing where you sit in the office and see people one by... No, psychology is also informing policy.
Oh, big time.
Is also advocacy.
Yeah.
Is also human rights. Look
at
what is happening in Rwanda right now. Let me tell you.
Ukraine?
Okay. We'll come
to
that's
Ukraine. Far afield.
No, not far afield. I'll tell you. I'll give you my view about Ukraine. But what I'm talking about Rwanda is working hard to heal
from the genocide
its population.
What are they doing? I'd like to actually...
Trauma-informed governance. They actually have...
I'd love to go and understand that model.
Exactly. Because you have... Let's give a good example of this guy who stole from Naivas last week. I don't know.
Did he?
Yeah, he stole something. He stole food.
Oh, it was in the news?
It was huge. Oh. And then, of course, it was politicized. And then it became a weapon. And then this week, nobody's talking about it. But the idea is a man stole to feed his family.
Crime and punishment.
That's what I'm saying. A man stole to feed his family. Then our laws said you're a thief. You either pay 100. Remember, this guy stole food worth 3,000 shillings, but he was either told you are going to be fined 100,000. So if I could pay 100,000, would I steal?
Would I steal?
So again, our laws, our governance, our judicial system. Look at it. So he was told pay 100,000 or go to jail for 1 year. Now, if he's the sole breadwinner who stole food worth 3,000 to feed his family, what happens to the children when they go to jail, when he goes to jail for 1 year?
To death.
The girls,
they go to the streets.
They become to the streets. The girls
The
become
violence
prostitutes.
increases.
So then we start saying there's prostitution in this country. Then we
Or
take the daughter,
violence.
take her to court. The boys, of course, to survive, become thieves. Then let's take them to court. So that's what I'm saying. When we talk about policies that are even humanity informed, when we are talking about even the crimes that people are committing, and fine, go to jail. But also, what are our prison programs?
That's another story.
You saw that things,
It's
do you call centers,
punishment,
do you call centers, do you what?
Rehabilitation.
People actually go to prison and come out better criminals in this country.
They perfect, they hone their skills.
And that's also a conversation we are not having, but it has to do again with human behavior. How are we actually setting up programs for behavioral change? And the programs that we're using right now, how old are they? How old are they?
As old as the hills.
Thank you. So they are not
They
even...
were there to punish during a certain time.
And they were informed by the colonial perspective.
To punish.
Exactly. To humiliate, to denigrate, to basically dehumanize. The most violent, angriest people are the saddest people. The people who feel their dignity as humans has been denigrated, has been stripped off. Those are the people who are actually making our society unsafe. How that is going to be solved by having sessions is not possible.
And which in my own way, that's why, remember I said to you earlier that I'm a big believer in community health. So I actually started a CBO.
Nice.
It's called
You have to give me, let me see one of those
promoting mental health, promoting mental wellness in communities. And specifically, I do a lot of work in school safety, because I really believe that one individual sitting in this counseling room, as opposed to if I was in a community or in a school, I could impact 400 children in a day, then 4 people in a day. So it's one of the things that, I'm working in that area as well.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to actually share this I'm going to share this on all the True North platforms. But you see, that's exactly what I'm saying. Now we are on board, because the idea that, you
have to work from a protective, not curative, preventative.
Thank you.
And also accessible financially, because to see a psychologist, in Nairobi, I think if you're not paying a lot of money, it could be maybe 2,000 to 3,000 shillings, and it goes all the way to 15,000 shillings. How many people can afford that?
Yeah.
If you go to a school or a workplace or the prison or any institution, you can reach at least 400 people in a day and make a bigger impact. Or you campaign within communities. It's just, for me, the community approach makes sense.
It does make sense, But then again, we also have to consider even the financing that is going even into mental health in this country.
We are the orphans of health.
Exactly.
And it's not only in Kenya, even in South Africa, I think their budget was like less than 25% of the entire budget.
Oh, but here it's less than 1%.
Yeah, I don't even know what it is here, but
it's less than 1%.
There's no thought. If you look at places like Mathare, it's the only one that has been here forever in Nairobi. In Mombasa, I think we have Portrees. In Eldoret, Western, Nyanza, go up north, I don't think we have facilities.
No.
Unless they're private.
Yes.
So
or just a ward, a medical ward.
Yeah, but not a proper institution.
I agree.
So what are we even saying? I mean, Mathare is like 100 years old.
It is over 100 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you, working in Mathare, is like one of the greatest gifts I ever received in my profession.
Oh, how long were you there for?
I did it for my community service,
Mhm.
for my undergraduate internship, and for my practicum.
Okay.
Right?
Must have been an eye-opener.
Oh, it was. And then I also did KNH. I did KNH for my internship.
Yeah.
So being able to be in the public settings
Yes.
was very informative. And of course, living there now, going into the military and establishing, the psychology department at a place where I remember during training, I used to get poked and being asked, "Oh, at a psychologist, what the hell is a psychologist?" So when I explained myself, they would say to me, "Did you hear that there are people who are crazy in the military?" So also the idea that it's about, again, somebody who has already become undone.
Yeah, it's already their damage.
Yeah, as opposed to preventative or management or treatment or all those things. And it's a human condition everybody goes through. So to be able to see even how, for example, in the maximum security unit, how even today they are accommodated. Even the infrastructure needs to change. I don't know if you've ever been to Madari, to the maximum security unit.
No, I'd like to go there.
My God.
It's on my bucket list. I need to go there.
I don't know if nowadays they allow people, but back then...
But if you're in the practice...
I mean, you could give it a shot. I haven't been there in a while. But I'm telling you...
No, I can imagine the conditions. It's like what we had way back in the 100 years ago.
It's the same infrastructure.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, we should all be ashamed.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, for me, I feel, irrespective of what we build in terms of infrastructure, if we are not going to bring the human consciousness along, it's all for nothing.
And also the dignity. Remember,
exactly.
Everyone has dignity.
Human dignity, man. As long as those things are not coming along, we shall keep...
They're still stuck
we shall keep
in the dark ages of mental health.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, the individual consciousness is our collective consciousness.
That's what I was going to say. It's about the collective.
Yes.
But how do we influence the collective?
But it's what we've been talking about right now.
Yes.
It's having those conversations.
And more of them.
And it's trusting ourselves with the conversation, and it's trusting each other with the conversations. Yeah? Because people feel sometimes if they speak about what things really are.
If they're themselves.
Yeah, if they're themselves.
They get targeted.
Exactly. They get not even targeted, not even punished, ejected.
Yes, and ostracized.
That's the thing.
You see, as human beings, we all seek to belong. With our social psychology.
Yes.
And you will lie. You will do anything to conform. Yes. So it's also a human condition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's a lot to think about.
A lot.
Yes. But there's also a lot to do. But for me, I believe in conscious action. Right? Because we must do from an informed and conscious point of view.
And from conviction, like you say, trust what you're doing.
Yeah.
Really believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you listen keenly, the biggest, loudest voices that are determining our collective consciousness and the direction of this country are not taking us in the right direction. Where actually it is about every human being being valuable, having dignity, and that being respected.
Having a voice.
Yes. That's not where we are headed.
Give a voice to bystanders. We should stop being bystanders. That's one of my favorite lines.
Bystanders are the worst.
Yeah, we need to speak out.
Bystanders are the worst. From even like, there's the letter Martin Luther King wrote when he's talking about the bystanders. Those people who are like, no, these both parties are right. No, let's sit on the fence.
Let's wait for someone else to make a decision.
That's right.
Yeah.
I guess
so
we just have to be able to trust ourselves and to be able to trust each other. But also have hope that things can be better.
And just keep going at it and hopefully pass on the baton to the next generation, because I feel like, my time is up. I need
No cop-out!
No, it's not a cop-out, it's also a reality that you do stuff, you reach a point, physically you can't. Hopefully there's like a succession plan and...
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, and people...
Stephen Hawking. He physically could not.
Yeah.
May he inspire you.
But he carried on.
But yeah, may he inspire you.
Yeah.
May he inspire you.
No, I'll keep going as long as I can, but there's the reality of you hope to be also mentoring the next generation to carry on it's not even a struggle, to carry on the work.
For me, I think this is my personal view.
Yes.
My objective is not to mentor anybody. Like, I won't go out of my way to tell somebody, follow in my footsteps. This is how to know. Let me tell you, you're talking about the next generation and people picking up and, when you're not able to, others doing it and stuff like that. Wangari Maathai is one of the people I deeply admire, I deeply respect, I 100% love. I never met her. But when we talk about people of influence, it's not even about you being alive or what you did or whatever. Because even beyond the grave, she is still so influential.
She's still alive.
She's still alive. And this is not even about the Nobel Peace Prize.
No.
Look at how that woman led her life.
Authentically.
Yes, authentically. And she didn't do it to prove anything to anybody or so that anybody could follow her. She was just living her life. I finished reading her book, I closed it, I cried.
Which
I
one is
cried.
it?
Untold.
I don't think I've read it.
Oh my
I'd love to
God.
read it.
Please read it. I cried and I cried and I cried. I could even cry right now, remembering just how much I cried. And I wrote at the back of that book, I literally wrote her a letter. And one of the things I said in that letter is that I'm done with being a coward.
It's time to speak out.
I'm done with being a coward. Because Wangari Maathai at that time, choosing to divorce, choosing to protect the environment, choosing to put
To go
her
against
career.
systems.
What did she have? There was even no social media. There was no the women's organization in this country, Chama, it was called Chama
Maendeleo.
Wanawake.
Yeah.
That was basically a KANU arm of, grassroots politicking. They did not even speak up for her. They didn't say, our fellow woman, no, you're
on your own.
You're on your own. And secondly, how dare you go against our Lord and Master? How dare you stand up to him? Who the hell do you think you are, woman? You don't even have a husband. Go cook, go take care of you. She was undeterred. Now, I look at the situation we have right now and the kind of women who are getting into politics, who are fighting to get into politics. If you look at even what is being thrown at them, I have been alive where Charity Ngilu ran for presidency. What was even thrown her way, the kind of, misogyny, the kind of chauvinism coming from women, especially.
Again, socialization, conditioning.
So, one of the things I respect Wangari Maathai for, she stood in her authenticity. Her authenticity is her power to date. Because you can't accuse her of ever going this way or that way.
Being someone's puppet.
No, you cannot. You know? You cannot. And all she did was just live her life. But her life, in terms of impact, it's amazing. You know?
Continues.
So, that's what I'm saying. For me, it's just about living your life.
But I would hope in that breath, just like, not maybe mentor people per se, but at least inspire the way she's inspired you.
Me, she's my mother.
I would like that people listening to some of the conversations, seeing the work that we do, get inspired.
Yeah.
To carry on.
I mean, it's interesting because I've met her daughter.
Okay.
I've met her granddaughters. I've told, of course, my daughter about her. My daughter met her daughter.
How did that happen?
The Greenbelt movement. It's basically about, and the Wangari Maathai Foundation.
Okay.
So I am very involved in that because that's another way for me. I realized that's, there's a thing where you die and you die.
Yeah, nobody remembers you.
Nobody remembers you.
They say,
but it's people who keep you alive. Yes.
Dead in 1970, but nobody talks about the dash in between.
Yes.
So, and that's what. It's a pity just that on your tombstone, if you have one, that is just born dead.
Yes.
But in between, you lived 70 years on this earth. But
or even
who
after.
knows, who remembers?
Yeah, or even after.
And then after.
It's people who keep you alive.
Yeah, so no legacy.
Exactly.
No footprint.
That's the thing. And it's people who keep you alive. It's not...
So your work as well.
Exactly. It's not who you were or how you looked, or no, it's how you showed up in this life. And for me, that has been so profound.
Impacted.
Yeah. And even when Wangari Maathai was doing everything she was doing, I don't think she ever sat and said, I want people to keep me alive. No, she did not.
Yeah, she just did her thing.
She just did her thing. And so for me, I think, let's do our thing.
True. Let's do this. Great.
Let's do our thing. Because it's all we can do.
It's only you can do. The rest will be for people to decide whether it was impactful.
Yes.
Whether it's worth a legacy or not.
Yes, absolutely.
True.
And it just gives such a good place to stop. Let's just do our thing. Let's just do what we are meant to do here.
Or what you just find yourself doing naturally without feeling it's work.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Oh wow, what a conversation.
What a conversation, exactly. Because it can all seem like so big, but at the end of the day, it's really this simple.
Yeah, but you can only do what you can do.
That's my point. Yeah.
If you start to attack everything. So I'll give you a few of these.
Yes, I will definitely make sure that my platforms are able to get onto this.
Yeah.
Because the more accessible people are, the better.
The better.
Do you want to talk about? So let me see. This is FaceApp.
Yeah,
talk about FaceApp.
FaceApp is an app that was developed by some teenagers in the Czech Republic. They were young students who realized bullying was a problem. So they developed this app to report bullying anonymously, where learners can use it to report. Because the biggest problem with bullying or harassment or stuff like that, people fear to speak up because of the backlash. You'll be targeted. So what happens is that a school signs up for FaceApp.
Okay.
It's quite reasonably priced. I think it's like 200 or 300 shillings per learner per year.
Oh,
and
nice.
The school has, you have a pastoral team or a team of people who then receive these complaints or reports and they address the issue. So they actually have a platform where they can speak freely. So you actually, that's why we say give a voice to bystanders. People no longer just watch and say, oh, I can't go and say this because they'll know it's me. You're able to log in and say,
anonymously.
Yeah, anonymously. Although you will say, okay, Lucy from grade 10 was being pushed by so and so, and then it's
Okay.
addressed. Or I saw so and so crying,
Okay.
or I saw this and this happening. So we use FaceUp both in schools and in the workplace
To be able to improve the environment.
to improve the environment,
That's
to create
cool.
a safer environment,
Yeah,
and therefore a healthier community.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
so that's that.
Promoting mental wellness in communities.
Yes, so that is, we started last year, we're a startup. Our big focus is the safety in schools, using both FaceUp and workshops, psychoeducational talks. We can also do tailor-made. You do a needs assessment, like this is the school, this is what's going on, or maybe there have been incidences of suicide, then you can go and talk about that. So that's one of our projects. Then we are very also busy on advocacy and awareness, both on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
And then also training on mental health, and also promoting mental wellness through football at community level.
Okay.
Especially targeting the males, because we realize boys don't like to engage one-on-one.
Yeah.
But where there's an activity, and then you address whether it's drugs, whether it's navigating sexuality, or whatever age group you're dealing with, the problems within the community, you can address them without them feeling targeted, that it's just me being spoken to or being singled out. So that's what we are focusing on at the moment.
Okay, cool. Futa kivyetu.
Futa kivyetu, yeah.
Nice.
And then FaceUp, we call it Teteana, FaceUp, speak up.
Ah, Teteana.
Teteana.
Ah.
Yeah, so...
Wait, is it Teteana or is it
Tetea.
Tetea? Okay.
Is it Teteana?
Oh, so is this Kiswahili or something
I
else?
think it's misspelled.
Kuteteana, because it's
Kutetea is to...
kuteteana, like to advocate for each other.
Okay.
Yeah, kuteteana.
Teteana, okay. I just thought that, so this one is just Teteana, advocate with...
Yeah, that's exactly it. So
yeah.
it's actually Kiswahili, but
It is Kiswahili.
so cool. Thank you so much.
That's what I'm involved in.
Thank you.
In a nutshell.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate
I
our
really enjoyed the
conversation.
conversation.
Yeah.
Let's see where it takes us.
Cool. What is your hope for the future?
Just to see, especially like, because having been a teacher, worked in schools for a long time, just to be able to see safer schools, because schools are really the breeding ground of a lot of mental challenges, and a lot of bullying happens, and I also see a lot of school children in my private practice, and what they go through, it's just so unnecessary. So if we could at least start by creating those safer places, then you kind of preparing better individuals as young adults and adults.
Oh my gosh. So I saw this thing yesterday, and I know this was the last statement before we close, but maybe this is really an opportunity for you to give your voice as a bystander, because I'm seeing that in schools, teachers are now agitating for the powers to discipline children physically once again.
But we all know that doesn't work.
We know.
Yeah.
But I think when the whole beating thing was removed, there was no replacement. Yes, there was no replacement.
They lost control.
Exactly. Or they felt as if they did. And so, please see if anything that you can do to inform some form of replacement, so that the teachers can stop feeling not just not in control, but also that they have been slighted, because I feel that's how they're feeling.
They've been disempowered.
Yes.
Yeah. But really that has to start at Department of Education, doesn't it?
But that's why I'm telling you to go.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm saying go.
If you know somebody there, I'm there.
Yeah. No, you don't need to know anybody. You just need to know there's a CS or a PS. Okay. Go knock on their doors.
Is that your personal challenge to me?
Yes, it is. And I'm not telling you things that I haven't done myself.
No.
You don't have to know.
Worth
Yeah,
trying.
you don't have to know everything to take action.
No.
You
but
just
make
need
a
to
contribution.
know. Make a contribution, which is actually where we started with this conversation.
Yeah.
What contribution are we gonna make? Make a contribution. You don't need to know anybody. This is a democratic country where
We should be a
office
public
is
servants.
an open door policy where you walk in and you say, this is my contribution. Because I feel teachers are getting frustrated.
Teachers, it's tough. I was a teacher.
It's tough.
And that's why I said I quit.
Yeah.
Because the kids had become too much for me.
There you go.
And then I was like, if I'm going to start engaging in shouting matches and exchanging words with learners, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah, you're done. You're actually going to become undone. So that's my challenge to you. You know, I'm doing my work in terms of, you know, the security personnel field with veterans and all. Me, I'm knocking on doors, breaking down doors,
How did you get
opening
involved with
doors.
that?
What do you mean?
How did you get involved with the military angle of it?
You do know I was in the military?
No.
Oh, snap.
I don't know anything about you.
I love it.
Were you in the military doing what?
Psychology.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see, this was like, you just invited me. I didn't know where I'm going. I don't know who Lucy Wairimo is.
Yeah.
Sidri?
Wow, that's amazing. And I think this is,
I'm just
and you see,
open.
this is
I'm
part,
just
no, it's
open.
true, and this is why our conversation, when we started, did I not tell you we don't know each other?
Yeah, we don't.
Yeah. But for me, I know people because I'm just that kind of a person. So me, I know, I invited you for what I have seen, what I know, and you see the conversation we've had.
Amazing, I've loved it.
Yeah.
Really loved it.
So yeah, I was in the military for like over a decade, and now basically in the service for veterans to just try and make sure that there is some form of moral patriotism being exercised in this country. So it's a long and winding road, but everything worth it is a journey. Yeah, essentially. Umeniurumia. You looked at me like umeniurumia.
I'm like, it's tough working with people who are so traumatized.
It's true.
I had a young girl who was part of my group. She wanted to be a psychologist in the military. Maybe I should tell her about you.
Please
if
do.
you don't mind.
Please do.
I think she was in third year at USIU.
Yeah.
I'll contact her and tell her I've
Please
actually
do.
met somebody, because she said that's where she ultimately wanted to end up.
Yeah. I mean, it's very important, again, to keep going into these spaces that have been traditionally, male-centric, but also neglected,
And
but
yet
also very
everybody knows
necessary.
the trauma they go through.
Do they really?
Yeah, no, me like now, you know how people just don't like cops and things.
Yeah.
But I always say, cops,
And there are traumatized lots.
you need to give them respect for the crap they do trying to look after. I hope they're not on camera.
No, we are. We haven't
Oh my
finished.
God, so I mustn't use words like crap.
No, crap
So
is fine.
anyway, so for them doing the jobs they do, trying to keep very unruly people in order.
Again, we are coming back to system.
Yeah.
People are people unruly or they're on survival mode.
Whatever it is, but now imagine that cop trying to control you.
I know, but also
he's gonna do his job or just survive as well.
But also look at the template that has been used to train this cop. Again, goes back to it hasn't been updated. Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. To say that one individual, one sector, one population, one group is a problem in this country is a cop-out. Yeah, it's systemic. Yeah. And that's why our solutioning has to be systemic. Yeah.
And also that, I forget the name of it, but where you look at what's happening upstream.
Aerial. Yeah. An aerial view.
Yeah, upstream and not just collecting bodies at the bottom.
Yeah, Desmond Tutu said that.
Yeah, you go and fix that railing so people don't jump over it.
Exactly. Yeah, Desmond Tutu said it. He said, we can get very good at collecting people at the bottom of the stream and saving them, but until we are able to address what is making them come downstream in the first place, we shall just be doing, useless work. So it's
a
true.
vicious, and I think that, sorry to say this, but I think that is when you're doing individual counseling, that's what you're doing.
Yes!
community work
Good.
that I'm more invested in.
If we don't stop now, this conversation will never end. So thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to meet you.
I hope that our conversation will elicit comments and directions that will bring us to a second follow-up conversation.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you.
Love that.
I appreciate. What do you have to say to the people before we close on?
Lucy is a very dynamic individual. I am so glad I met her, and I'm just thinking, gosh, we've been talking for like 1.5 hours, not actually 2 hours.
Yes.
And we could keep going,
Yep.
but next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.